What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. In the last episode, I took you guys along for the ride as I installed new front wheel bearings on my 74 Chevy Nova Custom. And I went the whole 9 yards with that video. I mean, from start to finish, from me removing the setup, changing out the bearings, changing out the races, packing the bearings with grease, and even how tight to put that nut. I just basically did the whole job and you guys tagged along as I did it. In the beginning of the video, I had stated that it's not the first time that I worked with the wheel bearings. And at around 10,000 miles, I basically changed out the wheel bearings initially. But I also upgraded the braking system. Now, to change the wheel bearings on these cars, well, that requires removal of the rotor, and everything's on the rotor. And so when I was taking out that rotor, I opted for a cross-drilled and slotted rotor when I was changing my bearings. Not only that, I also went with 2-piston Willwood calipers and steel braided lines all the way around. Now, as far as the rotors themselves, I didn't just do the fronts, but I also did the rears. So all 4 wheels have cross-drilled and slotted rotors. I did one other thing to the braking system to actually upgrade it. And as you saw from the title, that other upgrade was HYDROBOOST. From the last video, I stated that around 10,000 miles, I did that upgrade. And in those first 10,000 miles, I got to see how the car performs in the braking department. And I was not happy. I wanted my car to stop like a modern car. As I stated in the last video, stop on the dime. And well, when I had to hit the brakes hard in an emergency situation, the car went just a little bit further than I'd liked and felt comfortable with. I didn't like that. Now, driving around town, it was fine. But stopping in an emergency, well, that I just wasn't comfortable. So I had to do the upgrade. And so in this video, I'm going to show you the steps that I took to upgrade my braking system to HYDROBOOST. And then at the end of the video, I'll show you how it looks in the car and, kind of explain it with a little more detail. So stick around and let's get started with the video. This was my setup, an 8-inch dual diaphragm brake booster. I could not get a larger booster because of the big block 454 engine. After deciding on HYDROBOOST to replace the brake booster, I searched for a kit that bolts on with no hassles and decided to go with HYDROTEC's kit. This kit came with some hoses and other small parts needed, making this kit a true plug and play. Here's the HYDROBOOST unit, brand new and has a firewall adapter plate specific for my Nova. Now before I can even think about installing the HYDROBOOST in my Nova, it has to be prepared to match my engine bay. I prepped it for base coat clear coat to match my Nova. I used my detail HVLP spray gun with a 1mm tip and some leftover paint I had stashed. I set my gun to spray very thin coats and lay down 4 coats of base. Then after it flashed, lay down 2 coats of clear. Unmasked it and I had one more finishing touch to add for the accumulator. I purchased a chrome accumulator cover to match this unit more with the engine bay. Here's the finished product. I love the chrome and red combination on this unit. Since the HYDROTEC's adapter plate replaces the factory booster brackets, they were removed with the booster. Here's the comparison between the 8-inch dual diaphragm booster and the HYDROBOOST. The HYDROBOOST unit is about 2 inches shorter in overall length. Since the vacuum is no longer needed, I removed the fitting and the hose. I replaced it with a stainless steel plug. The HYDROBOOST unit uses the power steering pump to apply braking force, so I had to modify my power steering pump housing for the return line. I had to separate the reservoir tank off the pump because I needed to drill a 1/2-inch hole into the reservoir for the return line. The plan is to install a bulkhead AN fitting, and the location of the fitting has to be below the level of the fluid. That way you never have any chance of air entering that return line. Here's the power steering pump all back together again, ready to be reinstalled and work with my HYDROBOOST unit. Using the parts from the kit, I had to make the pressure lines, and it's all cut to fit. Only 2 of the lines are pressure lines. Here's a look at the power steering pump installed with the lines. Notice there are 3 lines. Line number 1 is the Hydraboost return line. Number 2 is the steering box return line. And number 3 is the feed line to the Hydraboost unit. And here's the Hydraboost installed in my engine bay. It matches nicely with the color scheme. I'm going to try to go ahead and explain a couple of things, maybe elaborate on the installation. That way I can, take away all the mystery behind HYDROBOOST, because, we all know that power brake boosters is pretty easy. It's just a vacuum line connects to the booster and you have power brakes. Well, similarly, the HYDROBOOST is the same. It's basically, instead of using vacuum, it's using your power steering pump to get the power for you to apply the brakes. So just a quick overview. There's my master cylinder, and that's basically just a Corvette master cylinder. I added some of the paint to the lines here, and I clear coated it with actually nail polish. I took some of my girlfriend's nail polish, clear nail polish, and I actually coated those lines after putting the body color. And that's how I got that those lines to look all, embedded in with red. So just base coat, and then after the base coat flashed, took some nail polish, painted those lines, and then took some acetone and carefully cleaned off the excess. So that looks really nice, really nice. It just kind of goes with the rest of this setup as far as the paint color scheme. So there's the adapter plate, and you can see it says Hydrotech right on there. And the adapter plate was clear coated when I clear coated the Hydraboost unit. So I wanted that to be clear coated because I didn't want it to start corroding, because it is a billet aluminum piece, and I figured, put some clear coat on it to protect it. This accumulator, now you can see there's the chrome covering, and let me explain a little bit on the accumulator. Basically, the purpose of that is just to be a reservoir for the Hydraboost unit. So let's say you're driving and your engine shuts off. If your engine shuts off, in the case with the brake booster, you have no vacuum. Well, when you hit the brake booster, you'll probably have a chance to hit the brakes with power brakes one time before the vacuum is spent. Well, similarly, this Hydraboost unit uses an accumulator, and it does pretty much the same thing. So it stores some of the hydraulic fluid, and so if the engine shuts down and you go to hit the brakes, you'll still have power brakes. So that way you have power brakes even if your engine happens to stop running. Now, you'll see, or you'll notice, that the engine is covered, and I did that because I didn't want to create some confusion, because obviously I don't have the 454 engine in this engine bay, which you will see in a future video, so stay tuned for that. But to just simplify things, I just basically covered everything and left out the 2 units that I'm going to be talking about for this video, which is the power steering reservoir. Obviously, you have the power steering unit attached to the reservoir, but in this case, we're going to be focusing on the reservoir and the Hydraboost unit. Now, the connections for this Hydraboost, just to make it simple, you just need 3 lines, but 3 lines that you have to connect, and then between the power steering and the Hydraboost, because if you're using the power steering fluid to power the Hydraboost, well, you also have to power the power steering box. So the way it works, I'm going to try to simplify it. You have a line that goes from your power steering pump, and it's a pressure line, and that line goes directly to your Hydraboost unit first. That's this line right here. So it's coming off of the power steering pump, and it feeds into my Hydraboost. So see if I can kind of get, you can kind of see right here. Right there is a connection. So it's on the bottom in this unit. So it feeds the HYDROBOOST. Then from the HYDROBOOST, you get another line that comes off. And of course, in this case, I actually cover it because you can see my header here. So this is the, you can kind of see it there. Let's pull it back. So you see the line, and it's also steel braided. That's the shorter line. So that will be the feed for your power steering box, which you can kind of see it goes down to my power steering box. Okay, so you got one pressure line. As you saw from the picture, there was two of them. That one is from power steering to the HYDROBOOST. Then from the HYDROBOOST to the power steering box. And then you have from the power steering box, you have a return line just as it should be from the factory, and it goes right back into the reservoir. You know, it's just basically a return line back to the reservoir. That completes the power steering run. Now, the second return line, which is where I actually drill the hole into my reservoir so that I can create two return lines. That's this one right here, the black one. And it's just basically, you know, a braided black line. It's rubber. There's no real pressure in that line. And that actually connects to, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see. Yeah, you can kind of see that. That connects to right here, which is the return line for the the HYDROBOOST. So basically, that's the setup. You got two feed lines, but the feed line, both feed lines are from the power steering unit, in which the power steering unit feeds the HYDROBOOST and then to the power steering pump. And so that's just basically one line that goes from the power steering through both the HYDROBOOST and the power box. I hope I made sense there. When you get these units, you have a choice of either creating a whole new line, which I have to say is recommended, or you can tee off the power steering return line with the HYDROBOOST return line. Now, let me tell you that from the research I've done and a lot of complaints that I've read on what happens when you do that, I can safely say that it is not recommended that you tee off both return lines, the HYDROBOOST and the power steering. Let me tell you why. When obviously the power steering pump is feeding that power steering box constantly, and there is a lot, I mean a whole lot of return from the power steering box. Okay, well, that return, if you tee it off to the HYDROBOOST, where there is no return, the return is only there when you hit the brakes and you let go of the brakes. So when you let go of the brakes, whatever fluid is flowing through the HYDROBOOST, it will, you know, after you let go of the brakes, will flow into the reservoir. But if you have the power steering box connected, well, all of the flow that's coming from the power steering box is going to impede the flow from the HYDROBOOST return line. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a slow return on your pedal. So you're going to hit the pedal, and then normally it should just come back up, so you're ready to hit the pedal again. But if you have it teed off, the pressure coming off of the power steering return line is going to slow down that pedal from coming back up. So let's say you have to hit the brakes and then hit the brakes again. Well, you'll have the brakes pedal coming up slow, really slow, and you won't have a full travel for your brake pedal so that you can reapply the brakes if it's going up really slow and you had to quickly hit the brakes. So do not tee off the two return lines. Create a new one. And as you saw from the pictures, it's very easy to do. You get a bulkhead, you make a hole in the power steering reservoir, and you're done. It's so easy. And in this case, as you can see, this is a different engine setup, and this is a different power steering setup. And obviously I did the same thing. I basically drilled a hole, and let me see if I can get the other one, because I have another one and that will probably help. Okay, so I'm back and I have another reservoir, which is the same as that one. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up testing out my plans with an extra that I acquired. So you can see the hole is there. Basically, you drill a 1/2-inch hole, and let's see if you can kind of see inside. Yeah, you can kind of see inside. There's the hole. And the idea behind the hole is, you know, when you fill this up, when it gets full, the little dipstick that's in here will tell you when this reservoir is full. Okay, so it has a full mark. You see there, has a max. So the idea is you drill that hole slightly under, this hole, slightly under the level of the fluid. And you can see here that I made a mark where the level of the fluid stopped when it was full. And you can see the hole is right below it. And that ensures that no matter what, you don't get any air to go back in the return line. Now, of course, you can see in my setup, I actually have a loop so that air doesn't travel. I mean, air is always gonna go up. So I made this loop on purpose so that if there was air, I don't want it to go back to my HYDROBOOST. So you can see I purposely set it up in this fashion. You don't want air going into your HYDROBOOST setup. So you want the level of the fluid higher than the return line for the HYDROBOOST. Okay, so we're under the car, and you can see there that black. See if I can point to it right there. That is the HYDROBOOST unit. And so you can see how straight I have it connected to my brake pedal. So in my case, I had 2 holes already drilled in my brake pedal, and I used the top hole so that the plunger for the HYDROBOOST is nice and straight. So you can see there. So anyway, that's basically the setup for under the dashboard for the pedal. So you want that nice and straight. So there you have it. That's the HYDROBOOST setup. It's pretty straightforward. It's very simple to install. It sounds like it's difficult, but let me tell you, the braking performance between the HYDROBOOST and the power booster, night and day difference. This brake booster will lock the wheels instantly, and the braking is just so powerful. It definitely feels a lot more modern, and when I had the big block in there, it stopped the car like nothing. The amount of brake force that this does is insane. If you are not wearing your seatbelt and you hit the brakes, you'll fly through that windshield. That's just an analogy as far as how powerful the brakes become when you add HYDROBOOST. Was it worth it? Hell yeah. So definitely a worthwhile upgrade, and hopefully that explained as far as the lines. You got one feed line, and that one feed line turns into a second feed line, which is the shorter one there. That's covered with this fireproof sleeve. And then you have a return line just as normal from the power steering box, so that doesn't change. And you have a return line which you add and adapt into your power steering reservoir. That's the only thing that I have to say that you have to add to make this work efficiently. So that's pretty much it. That's basically the setup. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to hit the notification bell along with that subscribe button so you don't miss the future episodes, which you will see what's under that sheet in future episodes. And of course, don't forget to hit the like button. Just a little click and we're golden. Lets me know that I'm doing a good job showing you the details of what I did to my Nova. and it helps out the channel tremendously. So if you can do that, I would definitely appreciate that immensely. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching.